take me through sort of what gets us to the Miami that we know today. That's seems, at least on the surface, you tell me, a little more civil than that.
Well, I would posit that a lot of that skyline was built by cocaine indirectly. Money that built banks, that went into construction loans, that has money that per kilo that has been laundered or thrice removed from that original kilo that fell into receivership. Um, it's absolutely unrecognizable today if you go to Miami, even from 10 years ago, especially from 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. The skyline is just teeming. It's crazy.
And cocaine
And
built that skyline.
I would say that it did because cocaine then went into the savings and loan crisis. A lot of these banks that failed. We illustrated with the victors of the mutiny, the biggest cocaine dealers in Miami history, Willie and Sal, Los Muchachos, which take up a good third of the book. They were smart enough to realize that it wasn't just about selling cocaine. It was about parking that money somewhere, laundering it, using Panama as a place to build front companies, buying, custom speedboat building operations all up and down Florida, buying assets abroad, buying them through Panamanian banks. I mean,
Shell companies and all of that stuff, right?
shell companies, and they were big buyers. I didn't have this in the book, but bull semen, that was a very big thing. They realized that
What?
was bull semen, which was, I mean, if you were into the bullfighting realm, and you could market the semen, the seed of a very powerful bull that was prolific in the bullfighting ring, or
Well,
the rodeo.
I mean, I gotta ask, what would one do with the semen after one purchased it?
It's just a store of value. It's frozen, and there's a fungible market for it in Texas and Oklahoma and in Mexico and in Juarez and in areas that have a kind of a, not just bullfighting or rodeo culture. These guys parked a lot of money, and they had land, an airstrip in Central Florida in kind of redneck country, and they had horses. Horses were great because they, there was an element of kind of racing them. There was a competitive spirit. You could deduct all of the feed and all of the upkeep. It was such a ridiculous commodity, cocaine, that you had to be Fortune 500 like in kind of getting a CFO apparatus to manage it. You couldn't just open up a pizzeria and launder a couple $100.
So the level of detail and sophistication for creating these networks of companies to park all this cash.
And look how long it took the feds to ultimately keep up with that. I mean, they finally nabbed Willie and Sal in October of 1991. This case went to trial in 1995 after several witnesses were executed, and that jury was bought. And so the government retried them again. What was it in 2002, at the turn of the century? Oddly enough, under Attorney General Janet Reno, who was the state attorney who had pursued them the first time around.
You can't make this shit up.
No, you can't make this shit up. And then the editor, I just remember the editor is like, "Are you making this up?" I was like, "No, here's the proof. I'll give you, line it up 1-to-1." There's definitely something almost vortex-like about this address, that it drew in all these people who would end up in the news again. I mean, the cop who was pursuing all the dopers ends up becoming the first Cuban chief of police in Miami. Willie and Sal become the biggest dopers in Miami history. The architects of the skyline, Steve Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, and George Perez were pals who had a table together. It's like it was the ooze that exploded, Miami out of this hotel, out of this address in 1979.